Hello, welcome to Ikate's Crossing. Okay, so I've been a little bit slow in continuing this story, Secret of Shambhala, especially for my Ko-Fi members. So I really want to sort of get back into it for you so you can sort of re-listen, you can listen to the continuation of this chapter. Been a little bit slow. So we are up to chapter 7, entering Shambhala. Okay, we're up to part 2. So what I want to do first is just take a moment to sort of take a breath and let's have a look and see what the cards. I'm using the Siddhartha Tarot. Okay, so with the Siddhartha, straight away, what flew out? 9 of Wands. Okay, so it's very much about perseverance. Keep going. Being that survivor energy is super important here. So it does feel like we're really sort of continuing our journey. We've got the sense of keep going, don't give up at what's important to your path or your journey. Super important here. So card number 2 we're looking at here is 7 of Swords, and I feel like that is very much about standing up for your convictions, your beliefs, about don't worry what anybody else says. You know, we're talking about perseverance and keep going. We've got the sense of standing in our own power, being able to sort of stand up for our own convictions, for what we believe, being able to have that sense of having that sense of standing in our own power, taking back what we feel's been taken from us. Maybe we feel that there's an idea or a perception that's out of our grasp, that somebody is in control of. Well, we're actually in control of our own beliefs, our own faith in this situation. So I do have that sense of our ideas. We're in control of our own ideas. So that's very important to sort of stand in our own power sort of energy. Whoa! It is about having a breakthrough and understanding with the Ace of Wands. We've got that sense of an understanding coming into play here. So here we've got this perseverance, this keep going, don't give up sort of energy. Take back what we feel may be taken from us, allowing us to have that breakthrough, that understanding of what's important to us. Oh, okay. Couple of cards, 3 cards flew out here. Here we've got 4 of Swords. So we've got this moment of sort of it's interesting because each of these cards, 4 of Swords, 3 of Wands and 4 of Cups, is very much about standing still in silence. Okay, I think it's emotionally standing still in silence, allowing us this sense of what's our goals, what's our dreams, where are we headed. We've got to take a moment to review our ideas or where we're going. Interesting, these 3 cards here that popped out, this 4 of Cups, 3 of Wands and 4 of Swords, to me is this whole sense of standing still, allowing ourselves to breathe, take a moment to think about our goals and where we're headed, looking at reflection, contemplation, really important, and emotionally, mentally, and with our passions. I think it's very important, our goal-orientated energy. Very interesting card. Now, interesting because I get a very much drawn to... Where is the cards that I want? Must be in a different space. Looking for a particular deck. Interesting. Oh, here it is. Epic. I'm going to use Wisdom of the Epics of Hind. Oops. Let's just take a moment. Whoa, okay. Okay, it's about nourishment. Annapurna's nourishment. So I feel it's very much about nourishing our soul, nourishing our emotions, and dealing with any grief that we have from the past. And the grief can be any sort of grief, not necessarily a loss of a person or anything like that. Okay, found the deck I was looking for. Shadow of Light. Right, so let's do a card for this. Right, so we've looked at the Siddhartha Tarot, which talks about taking a moment, taking a pause, reviewing where we are in our life and what we need to do. It's about nourishing our grief, dealing with our grief, being able to nourish our soul. And then the cards that flew out here is very much about being in the now. Being in the now, seizing the moment, being in the now, and allowing ourselves to stay protected by creating some boundaries within ourselves. Maybe boundaries in how we choose to react to the situation. Who do we let into our life? What direction are we moving into? So, yeah, really important here to be able to create those boundaries and really be in the now. Super important there, so that we can stay protected in our journey. So that's what I wanted to add. Right, so let's continue. Now that we've looked at those cards, let's sort of take a moment to sort of take a breath and read this second part to chapter 7 of The Secret of Shambhala. Okay, super important there to be able to do that. Take a moment, take a breath, think about the reading, think about the cards that have pulled out. Super important. So let's continue this second part. Okay, when we arrived, the house was just like Annie's, except that it was built into the side of a hill and had different furniture. I noticed an identical black box outside, and we entered through the force field just as before. We were met by Tashi and another woman who introduced herself as Pema. Pema was taller than Annie and slimmer. Her hair was jet black and long. She wore only a long white dress and was smiling, but I realized that something was not quite right. She asked to see Annie alone, and they walked into another room, leaving Tashi and me sitting in a living area. I was about to ask him what was wrong when I felt an electricity in the air behind me. I saw the ripple distortion open just like the one I'd seen in the force field around Annie's house. Only this time it appeared in the middle of the room. I blinked, trying to grasp what was happening. As I focused, I saw a field with small plants through a distortion, as though it were a window. To my surprise, a man walked through the opening into the room. Tashi stood up and introduced us. The man's name was Dorji. He nodded politely to me and asked where Pema was. Tashi pointed towards the bedroom. What just happened? I asked Tashi. He looked at me with a smile. Pema's husband arrived from his farm. Can't some of you do this in the outer cultures? I told him briefly about the rumours and myths about yogis who could project themselves to distant locations, but I've never personally seen anything like this, I added, trying to regain my composure. How is it done exactly? We visualise the place where we want to go, and the amplifier helps us to create a window into that place right in front of us. It also creates an opening back in the other direction as well. That's how we could see where he was before he came through. And the amplifier is the black box outside. That's right. And all of you can do this. Yes, and it is our destiny to do it without the amplifier. He stopped and stared at me, then asked, will you tell me about the culture you came from in the outer world? Before I could answer, we heard a voice from the bedroom declare, it's happened again. Tashi and I looked at each other. After a few minutes, Annie led Pema and her husband out of the bedroom, and they all sat down in the living room beside us. I was so certain that I was pregnant, Pema asked. I could see the energy and feel it momentarily, and then with a few minutes it disappeared. It must be the transition. Tashi was looking at her intensely, totally fascinated. What do you think happened? I asked. We have intuited, Anna said, that it is some kind of parallel pregnancy. and the child has gone somewhere else. Dorji and Pema looked at each other for a long moment. We'll try again, Dorji said. It almost never happens twice in one family. We must be going, Annie said, standing up and embracing the couple. Tashi and I followed her out through the force field. I was still overwhelmed. In some ways, the culture here seemed ordinary. In other ways, totally fantastic. I tried to take it all in as Annie led us in a dozen or so yards to a beautiful rock ledge overlooking the massive green valley below. How could there be a temperate environment this large in Tibet, I blurted out. Annie smiled. The temperature is controlled with our fields, and to those with less energy, we are invisible. Although the legends say that we will begin to change when the transition grows near. I was startled. You know about the legends, I asked. Annie nodded. Of course. Shambhala is the original holder of the legends, as well as many prophecies all through history. We help bring spiritual information into the outer cultures. We also knew that it was only a matter of time before you begin to feel us. Me personally, I asked. No, anyone from the outer cultures. We knew that as you generally raised your level of energy and awareness, you would begin to take Shambhala seriously, and that some of you would be able to come here. That is what the legends say. At the time of Shambhala's shift or transition, people from the outer cultures will arrive, and not just the occasional adepts from the east who have always found us periodically, but people from the west as well, who will be helped to come here. You said the legends predict a transition. What is that? The legends say that as the outer cultures begin to understand all of the steps to extending the human prayer field, how to connect with divine energy and let it flow through with love, how to set your field to bring on the synchronistic process and uplift others, and how to anchor the strong field with detachment, then the rest of what we do here in Shambhala will become known. You're talking about the rest of the fourth extension. She looked at me knowingly. Yes, that is after all what you're here to see. Can you tell me what it is? She shook her head. You must take it one step at a time. You must first realize where humanity is going, not intellectually, but with your eyes and feelings. Shambhala is the model for that future. I nodded as I looked at her. It's time for the world to know what human beings are capable of, where evolution is taking us. Once you grasp it fully, you'll be able to extend your field even more to grow even stronger. She shook her head and added, but understand that I don't have all the information about the fourth extension. I'll be able to guide you through some of the next steps, but there is more that is known only by those at the temples. What are the temples? I asked. They are the heart of Shambhala, the mystical place you imagined. It's where the real work of Shambhala is done. Where are they located? She pointed north across the valley at a strange circular group of mountains in the distance. Over there, past those peaks, she said. During the time we were talking, Tashi was silent, listening to every word. Annie looked at him and brushed back his hair with her hand. It was my intuition that Tashi would have been called to the temple by now, but he seems to be more interested in life in your world. I jerked awake, sweating. I'd been dreaming of walking through the temples with Tashi and someone else on the verge of understanding the fourth extension. We were in a maze of stone structures, most of them sandy bronze, but out in the distance was a temple that appeared bluish in colour. A person in dramatic Tibetan attire was standing outside. In the dream, I'd been running from the Chinese official I'd seen several times before. He was chasing me through the temples, and they were being destroyed. I was hating him for what he was doing. I sat up and tried to focus, barely remembering the walk back to Annie's house. I was now in one of her bedrooms, and it was morning. Tashi was sitting in front of the bed on the big chair staring at me. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. What's wrong? He asked. Just a scary dream, I said. Will you tell me about the elder cultures? Can't you just go there through the window or wormhole or whatever you call it? He shook his head. No, this is not possible. Even at the temples. My grandmother intuited that it could be done, but no one has succeeded because of the differences in the energy levels between the two places. Those at the temples can see what is happening in their outer cultures, that's all. Your mother seems to know a lot about the outer world. We get our information from those who reside in the temples. They come back often, especially when they sense that someone is ready to join them. Join them? Almost everyone here aspires to acquire a place in the temples. It is the greatest honor and the opportunity to influence the outer cultures. As he spoke, his voice and level of maturity reminded me of someone 30 years ago. Even though he was large, it was disconcerting to look at this 14-year-old face. How about you? I asked. So you want to go to the temples? He smiled and looked towards the outer room as though he didn't want his mother to overhear. No, I keep thinking about somehow going to the outer cultures. Will you tell me about them? For half an hour I told him as much as I could about the current state of affairs in the world, the way most people lived, the diets most ate, the struggle to institute democracy around the globe, the corrupting influence of money on government, the environmental problems. Far from being alarmed or disappointed, he soaked it all up with enthusiasm. Presently Annie came into the room and sensed that there was a conversation of note going on, and paused. Neither of us said anything, and I slumped back down on the pillow. She looked me over. We've got to get more energy into you, she remarked. Come with me. I put on my clothes and met her in the living room area, then followed her outside and around to the back of the house. Here the trees were very large and spaced about 30 feet apart. Between them was a coarse grass like sage and dozens of other plants that looked like huge asparagus ferns. She urged me to move my body, and I attempted the exercise Yin had showed me. Now sit here, she said when I finished, and raise your energy again. As she sat beside me, I began to breathe in and focus on the beauty around me, visualizing the energy coming into me from within. As before, the colours and shapes began to stand out very easily. I looked over at Annie and saw an expression of deeper wisdom on her face. That's better, she said. You still weren't all here yesterday when we visited Pema. Do you remember what happened? Sure, I replied, most of it. Do you remember what happened when she thought she had conceived? Yes. One moment it seemed to have been there, and then it was gone. What do you think happened? I asked. No one really knows. These disappearances have been occurring for a long time. In fact, they began with me 14 years ago. At the time, I was sure I was pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl. And then, in an instant, one of them was gone. I gave birth to Tashi, but I've always felt that his sister was alive somewhere. Since then, couples here have routinely had the same experience. They feel sure they've conceived, and then suddenly they realize their wombs are empty. All of them go on to have other births, but they never forget what happened. The phenomenon has been occurring with regularity throughout Shambhala all these 14 years. She paused for a moment, then said, it has something to do with the transition, maybe even with you being here. I looked away. I don't know. Aren't you having any intuitions? I thought for a moment, then remembered the dream. I was about to tell her about it, but I couldn't decide what it meant, so I didn't. Not really intuitions, I said, just a lot of questions. She nodded, waiting. How does the economy work here? What do most people do with their time? We've evolved to a place when we no longer use money, Annie explained, and we no longer manufacture or build items like in the alt cultures. Tens and thousands of years ago, we came from cultures that made the things they needed, like you do. But as I told you, we gradually came to understand that the true destiny of technology was to be used to develop our mental and spiritual abilities. I felt the soft sleeve of my parka. You mean everything you have is created energy field? That's right. What keeps it together? Once created, these fields last for as long as the energy is not disrupted by negativity of some kind. What about food? Food can be created in the same way, but we've found that food is best grown by individuals in a natural process. Food, plants respond to our energy and give it back to us. Of course, we no longer have to eat very much to stay vibrant. Most in temples don't eat at all. What about power? How are the amplifiers powered? Energy is free. A long time ago, we discovered a device using processes that you would call cold fusion. It created virtually free energy for our culture, which liberated us from spoiling the environment and enabled us to automate our mass production of goods. Gradually, all our time became focused on our spiritual path, on synchronistic perception, and on discovering new truths about our existence and providing this information to others. As she spoke, I recognized that she was describing a human future I first learned about in the 9th and 10th insights. As we developed spiritually here in Shambhala, she went on, we began to understand that human purpose on this planet was to evolve a culture that is spiritual in all its aspects. And then we realized that we had a greater power within us to help us accomplish what needed to be done. We learned the prayer extensions and used them to further evolve our technology, as I already explained, to help facilitate this creative power. At this point, we live simply in nature, and the only technology that remains are these units that help us mentally create everything else we need. Did all that evolution take place right here, I asked. No, not at all, she said. Shambhala has moved many times. Her statement shocked me for some reason, and I questioned her further. Oh yes, she clarified. Our legends are very old and come from many sources. All the myths of Atlantis and the Hindu legends of Meru stem from the old civilization that really existed in the past, where the early evolution to Shambhala worked itself out, developing developing our technology was the most difficult step, because to place technology fully on the service of our individual spiritual development, everyone must move to a point where spiritual understanding is more important than money and control. That takes some time. Some people who are locked up in fear and think that they personally need to manipulate the course of human evolution with their egos often desire to use advances in technology in negative ways to control others. In many early civilizations, a few controllers tend to subvert the use of the amplification machines by trying to use them to monitor and control other people's thoughts. Many times these attempts ended in war and mass destruction, and humanity had to start all over again. The outer cultures face this problem right now. There are people who want to control everyone else by using surveillance, embedded chips, and brainwave scans. What about the artifacts of these ancient cultures you're speaking about? Why has almost nothing ever been found? Continental drift and ice have buried most of it. And then once a culture progresses to a point where material goods are being created mentally, if anything goes wrong and a wave of negativity brings the energy down, it simply all disappears. I took a breath and shrugged. Everything she said made perfect sense, yet at the same time was utterly disconcerting. It was one thing to hypothesize human civilization evolving towards a spiritual future. It was quite another to find oneself immersed in a culture that has already reached it. And he moved closer. Just remember that what we have done is the natural course of human evolution. We are ahead of you, but because we have done what we've done, the way can be easier for you in the elder cultures. She paused, and I broke into a grin. Your energy looks much better now, she said. I don't think I've ever felt this alert. She nodded. As I said before, it's the level of energy. The individuals here in Shambhala Mountain. It's contagious. There are so many people here who know how to bring energy into themselves and project it outward to others, that it creates a multiplying effect where everyone takes in the prayer energy they've received from others and sends it out to everyone else again. Do you see how it grows? All the assumptions and expectations of everyone in the culture flow together and make one big cultural prayer field. The general level any culture achieves is determined almost solely by how conscious its members are about, first, the resistance of their prayer fields in general, and then second, how to extend them consciously. When the extensions are finally practiced, the energy level soars. If everyone in the outer cultures knew how to bring in energy and flow it out, making the prayer extensions a priority, they could achieve the level we have here at Shambhala, just like that. She snapped her fingers for emphasis, then added, that's what we're working on at the temples. We use our prayer extensions to help raise the awareness in that outer cultures. We've done this for thousands of years. I considered her words, then asked, tell me everything you know about the fourth extension. She was silent a moment longer, staring at me very seriously. You know, You must take it one step at a time, she replied. You were helped. But in order to get here, you had to know the first 3 extensions and part of the 4th. You must stop now and understand exactly how the extensions actually work. When an extension is completed, one's energy reaches out further and becomes stronger. This occurs because when you send your energy out to bring in synchronistic experiences and uplift others, and when you anchor this energy with detachment and faith, you're promoting the divine plan. And the more you can act and think in harmony with the divine, the stronger your power gets. Do you see? There is a built-in safety device, as you've no doubt seen. God is not going to turn up the power in you unless you're on the same page with universal intention. She touched my shoulder. So what you have to do now is get clearer about where humanity is supposed to go on. How overall human culture must evolve. It is time for this to happen. That is why you and others are finally seeing and understanding Shambhala. This is the next step in the 4th extension. You must really grasp the intended future of humanity. Already you've grasped how we have mastered technology and placed it in the service of our inner spiritual evolution. Experiencing this extends your energy out further because you can now set this expectation into your prayer field. It is important to understand how this works. You already know how to send a field out in front of you as you walk through this world, and you know how to set it to increase energy and synchronistic flow in yourself and others. You extend your field another step when you not only visualize your field uplifting the people around you into their higher intuitions, but do it with the certainty of where everyone's higher intuitions, yours and theirs, are leading towards an ideal spiritual culture like the one you see here in Shambhala. When you do this, it helps them find their part to play in this evolution. I nodded, anxious for more information. Don't go too fast, she cautioned. You have not yet seen all of how we live here. Not only have we mastered technology, we have also restricted our world to focus entirely on spiritual evolution, on the mysteries of existence, on the life process itself. Okay, so that's it from me. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Now, don't forget, if you're on Ko-Fi, you're getting a preview of this before it goes live on my YouTube channel. Okay, so take care and blessed be.